communicated in person, face to face, but mostly, sitting in front of a computer screen. And there were there were a couple things that we played around with, that we toyed with, that we put on paper, but most of the stuff we didn't.
Would you be able to provide us with the stuff that you did put on paper? Or
Yeah, assuming that my attorney doesn't have any objection to it.
Under the existing districts, as they currently stand, District 3, Latinos comprise 45% of the electorate.
I'll take your word for it. I don't have the numbers.
It's in the documents I think you have as well. So if a Latino were to run today, would a Latino be able to win in that district?
I wouldn't want to speculate on that.
With 45% of the vote, you said most Latinos are Democrats, correct?
Yeah.
And racial block voting is very high in New Colorado.
Yeah.
So you would probably say that it's pretty likely that a Latino will be elected in that district.
I mean, I think generally, if we assume that 45% are Latinos and the vast majority of those are Democrats, and even though Latino turnout is less, it's probably enough in most cases for Latinos to, elect the candidate they want.
Especially even in a primary, that'd be very likely.
I mean, it depends, but
under
ordinary circumstances, yeah, there's a good chance. And, it depends in part on who's running, right? Different people are going to be more or less popular than others, but sure.
And who's the mayor of Capital City?
That would be Mr. Ramirez.
Mr. Ramirez.
Yeah.
And he was also considering running that neighborhood in that area in a possible election. So
I've
under
heard.
the proposed plan, it looks like you divided that area up considerably.
Under the proposed plan, what area do you mean?
The district that you're planning in, District 3, which is Capital City, that you divided up.
Yeah, to some extent. I mean, most of Capital City is in that district, but there are some areas around that that aren't.
So from the new plan to under the existing plan, there are 45% Latinos in the district. Under the new plan, you divide them up so no one comes close to that area. You see that's problematic?
I don't, because there was no majority-minority district under the old plan, and that's the standard as I understand it under the law. So.
Is it also true that if there are enough white voters that join Latinos that they could have a district that would be considered a Latino district?
You mean as a matter of law?
I'm asking you a question.
So, could you repeat the question, Counsel?
There seems to be enough crossover votes, as you said before, that they could probably elect Latino in that district.
You mean from the old CD3?
Under the old plan, correct.
So, you're asking me to assume
yes.
that the old plan is in effect for the 2012 elections. Okay. Yeah, I think, there would be a very good chance of that happening.
So then by the redistricting, it's actually taking away what seems to be what would be a Latino district.
Well, it's true there are no majority Latino districts under the new plan, but there were no majority Latino districts under the old plan either.
Earlier we had mentioned something about safe districts.
And by the way, we're going to go until 5 minutes after, so I'll give you like 3 minutes on this letter.
We were talking about safe districts for Democratic candidates. You're capable of producing some districts, but they wouldn't be safe because the margin of Democrats compared to Republicans wouldn't be large enough. Could you describe the racial makeup of these districts that were majority Democratic but not safe?
Majority Democratic but not safe. Well, I think, if you were right at 50 or 51%, or, 50.1%, right, it would be majority Democratic, but perhaps not safe.
I'm talking about the racial makeup of these districts that were not safe. What would that be?
Oh, it would depend. I mean, I can't tell you for sure. You mean ones that we experimented with but didn't ultimately adopt?
Correct. You have
can't.
no recollection of any of these districts that were majority Democratic but not safe. What the racial makeup looked like of any of these districts?
I'm sure we experimented with ones that were in the 50 to 51, 52% maybe range.
We're talking about racial here. Could you?
Oh, what the racial composition
Yeah,
of those
the racial
districts was?
composition.
I don't remember, but I don't remember.
Are you aware of any correlation between Latino voter turnout and higher rates of participation when a Latino candidate is running for office?
I mean, I think it's generally true from my political perspective, and your best answer would come from some political scientist, but I think it's generally true that.
You're aware of no history of this happening?
Excuse me,
in
may I
New
finish my
Colorado?
answer, counsel?
I suppose you may.
I think it's probably generally the case that when Latino candidates run, Latinos voters are more likely to turn out as a general rule. Okay. And then I'll give you three questions here. So,
You mentioned that ultimately all Democrats fell in line with the plan that was chosen.
yeah.
But I'm assuming that there was some discussion, so can you give examples of any objections that other senators had to the plan?
I can't give specific examples. I mean, there were a lot of discussions. I talked to a lot of people, so there were a lot of discussions I have. But, my vague recollection is some people wanted districts. People are strategic when they make these decisions, and some folks might have wanted, folks who are in the two majority Republican districts and are thinking they might want to run for Congress down the road probably didn't like it. I think there were some people like that, but I don't recall specific conversations. Okay, one last question.
Last question.
Yeah.
Was there any record of any discussions where Democrats didn't like the plan on the floor when you guys had discussions about the proposed bill?
Not to my knowledge. Okay, I'm going to cut it off there. So didn't you get these documents? Okay, let's turn this off. So